In this video, we're going to look at several topics that have come up as questions from comments on the videos I've already created. So I want to try and answer a few of those in just one video, and we'll do that with this quick tips and Q&A video. The first thing I wanted to address is the easy alias macro, and some people have been having trouble with it. I certainly had the same problem with it. Somehow the macro became corrupted, and instead of it actually having the macro in the file, it had some CSS, some descriptive of a web page. And I don't know how that happened, but it appears it happened to more than just me. So I'm going to show you how to fix that. So first thing you're going to need to do, you just open up FreeCAD. At the top here on the menu, if you go to this macro button, and then you can select where it says macros and it has 3 dots. When you do that, if you have Easy Alias actually installed already, you can select it and click Edit. And you should see the macro, and this macro is actually quite well commented. So all those things that are grayed out here are all comments. And you can see from this the programming language. Even if you don't understand the programming language, you can see that it's a programming language and that it has references here to Easy Alias and explains what the macro can do. Now, if yours doesn't have this in it, what you'll need to do is to go to the wiki, which I'm going to show you that now. We go to the wiki.freecadweb.org macro_easyalias /en. I think I have it in a bunch of different languages. En is English, of course, that's what I need. And then from here you have a nice description. It tells you how to use it. But if you scroll down, you actually have the macro. It's literally, that is the macro, and it's nicely documented. All you need to do is copy that down to this app active document recompute. You're going to copy all of that, and we're going to go to there. Make sure you get that top part in. You can literally copy that. So Control C or right click and copy, however you want to do that. Go back to FreeCAD and then highlight this whole thing if it's got the wrong stuff in it. So you can just highlight this and Control V, and you will have replaced it. And then a save is just the same as any file. So you have this macro file and you can say save. And once you do that, it will save that file for you. And now you'll have a working Easy Alias. So that's how to fix it. It's very simple. If you don't know it, though, it can be quite hard to figure it out. So that's why I wanted to add that into this video, just so you can see how to do that. Now I'm going to show you how that works. And we'll do that by creating a spreadsheet. So I'm going to go into the spreadsheet workbench. I'm going to hit new spreadsheet. Oh, I have to have a model. I have to have a file first before I can create that. So let's do a new file. And then we can create a spreadsheet. And now if I open my spreadsheet, I have to double click the spreadsheet. And I create here, let's say I create pitch. And I create height. And I create angle. So those are some of the parameters I want. Highlight those and make sure my spreadsheet is selected over here. Highlight these, go to my macro, and I can say macros, easy alias, execute. And you can see it aliased these fields. So now they have this pitch alias. So if you look up here where it says alias, it's pitch, this one is height, and this one is angle. And you can add more. So if you add something else here, you can do exactly the same thing, and you'll add those aliases in. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you, showed it in another video, but I'm going to put it in this one just for completeness. That's how to create a macro. So if I want to create a startup macro, for instance, we're just going to go to this macro and select macro recording. Or if you have this button over here, you can select that one too. It's the exact same button. So I'm going to select that. It asks for a macro name. I'm going to call this video test, just so I can delete it later. And it's going to default my macro path. I can change it, but I'm going to leave it go into that default path. I'm going to say record. Now what's happening is it's recording everything that I do on this screen until I hit this green button, or if I go up here and say stop macro recording. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file. So create a new file. And then I'm going to create a new part. And I'm actually going to switch over to my part design and create a body. So now I have part, body. And then I'm going to save this. So I'm going to say File, Save As, and I'm going to pick something to save it as. I'm just going to use the A2 name just because I can. And so now I have it saved, and then I'm going to pick Sketch. Before I select this, because I want to leave that as a possible selection, I'm going to stop the macro recording. So let's hit this green button over here. I'll go under this menu, stop macro recording. Okay, I'm going to cancel that for a minute, and I'm going to go back into my macros and record it video test. So somewhere down here, there it is. And if I edit this now, this is the macro. This is what I did to create this, to get a part that's called A2, or a file that's called A2 with a part and a body added in it, and opened up my new sketch. Now, when you look at this, you're going to see that some of the stuff here is in black and some of it is in green, and those green parts are actually commented out. So if we try and run this now, what I'm going to do first, before I run it, I'm just going to close this A2 and I'm going to say discard that. Now I'm just going to try and run this exactly as is. And I can either hit this run button over here, or I can go here and say recent macros, and there's my video test right there. Video test right there. So if I go to that one and click it, that is how it runs. Now what that did is it actually created that A2 and the part and the body, and it set me here. That's great if you always want to create something called A2 and then be set here. But if you want it to prompt you, that's when you need to look at macro. So let's cancel this again. Let's go back in here. So it creates a new document called unnamed, and then it says at part. So it's adding the part, adds the body, and then here is where it says save as. So what we want to do is we want to get it to ask me what I should save it as. And so this save as is not the part that we want. So actually, if we look here, it's the one above it that says save as. I think if we just delete that comment and comment this one, I believe now we'll get what we want. So let's give that a go. I'm just going to close this again, and then I'm going to run this macro, And now it asks me, what do I want to save it as? I'll say yes. And then it comes to here where I can pick the plane of the sketch. And again, it's created the part and it's created the body. So that's how you create that simple startup macro. How did I know that it was this line that we needed instead of this line? If you remember, that line was in there, but it was commented out. And so I looked at where we began the saved as. That was the next thing that happened that was commented out. And then this was the part where it was saving it as the file name that I'd given it. So clearly this was the bit that prompted me for that file name. So I just switched the two around. And you'll be able to do the same thing. You can just switch the two around, or you can look at these different things if you're creating macros for yourself. One final thing on the macros then. So if I go into the macro list, I go to that video test macro and I hit delete. Do I really want to delete it? Yes. Now it's gone. So you can add and delete them. If you want to load system macros, you can go into system macros, say add-ons, macros, and here's a list of macros that exist, and you can try them out, use them. Normally if you click on them here, it'll give you a brief description, and it'll also tell you if they are deprecated, so if they're current or not. And so you can do all that. Here's the easy alias one right there. And there's a lot of macros there, so you can pick and choose and see what you want to do. And what I'm going to do is nothing. I don't want to add any more. Once you add it, it will show up here in this list of user macros, and then you can modify it or do what you want with it. And you can actually, if you come in here, you can create one from scratch just by typing it. But I wouldn't suggest that. I would suggest recording it first and then editing it. That's the easiest way. Okay, hopefully that answers your questions on easy alias and how to create a start macro and how generally to get started with macros. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below. Okay, for the next part, I just want to show you a couple of things with the spreadsheet. So we're going to recreate that file. I'm going to do that quick using that macro that we just created. So it's called startup, and we're going to save it as that A2. Say save, say yes, that's all good. I'm going to do a drawing on the XY plane, and I'm going to create it from a square and a circle. And then I'm going to create a couple of dimensions. I'm actually going to center this. And I'm going to move this over here. I'm going to give that a dimension to there. Okay, and you can see everything is tiny. Doesn't really matter. I'll give this a dimension. I'm actually going to make that one 5. And then I'm going to say this side and this side are equal. And then I'm going to make this one 3, 3, 2. I'm going to get it inside. And then I'm going to make a diameter. I'll call that 1. That's right on the edge there. So we might want to change this to 6, just for grins and giggles. And then I'm going to just do a dimension across there. We'll call that 1 as well. And there we have it. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this dimension and I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it hole diameter. And I'm going to go into this one here and call it square side. I have hole diameter and square side. That's it. And so now I have my sketch, and then I'm going to go in the spreadsheet workbench. I'm going to create a new spreadsheet. I'm going to open that spreadsheet, and I'm going to have hole diameter, and I'm going to have square side dimension. So if I want to read the hole diameter from that sketch, it's simple. I just go, it's a function of sketch dot constraints dot hole dia. And there you can see I have the dimension. I've read it from the sketch, and this one would be sketch. Oh, need our equal sign, sketch. You can see it prompts you there for some things, but not everything. So it won't tell me that the square sides is there, but square side. And so I'm reading these dimensions actually from that sketch. So if I go back to the sketch, I'm going to make this 7 millimeters. I come back to our spreadsheet. Now you can see this says 7 millimeters. So that would be useful if I wanted to be able to read what that hole diameter is, and then I wanted to be able to come up with a dimension that made sense from that hole diameter. The only thing that you can't do with these spreadsheets is have a circular argument, so you can't use it to read from it and write to it. So I couldn't say the hole diameter equals 1.5 now, because it would originally be 1, and it would get into a circular situation, wouldn't work. So again, what we're doing is we're reading this sketch, we're reading these dimensions because they're referenced. I can't just read a dimension from a constraint number. It doesn't work for some reason. Okay, somebody asked me about a parametric hole. I'm going to show you how to do the hole depth parametrically. So we're just going to use that start macro that we already created. And if you need to see how to do that, rewind to the beginning of the video and you'll see how to create the start macro. I'm just going to do that. Hit A2, say yes. We're going to create a block. Do that real quick. Something like that. I'm going to give that. I'm actually going to make this. Good Lord. I'm going to make this and this equal. I'm going to center it around that point. And I'm going to give it a dimension. We'll call that 10. So we'll close that. We'll pad that. Pop it in the middle. There's our pad. So it's a 10 by 10 cube. We're going to create a new dimension or a new sketch on the XY plane. Say OK. Just going to sketch a circle. And I'm going to use my view here so I can see it. I'm going to give it a dimension from here to here. Let me give it a dimension from here to here. And I'm going to give this a dimension. I'm just going to make that 2. So now I have a fully constrained hole. Let's say close. I'll say pocket. I think that pocket's going to go on the back there. Reverse it. So now I have a 5 millimeter hole. And to make that parametric, I just switch back into my spreadsheet, workbench, create a new spreadsheet, open that spreadsheet. So we're going to have diameter, horizontal, dimension, vertical dimension, hole depth. We might as well call this one hole diameter, just for completeness. I'm going to go here, go into my easy alias, and if your easy alias is not working, rewind to the beginning. That shows you how and why. Okay, so I'm going to give this some dimensions. I'm going to call that 2. I'm going to call this 1.5. I'm going to call this 1.5. And I'm going to call this 5. Just to get started, I'm pumping some dimensions in. Then I'm going to go back to my sketch. So it's under this pocket. Click open my sketch. Zoom in over here. Let's go in and assign these values. So now we're going to call this Spreadsheet horizontal dimension. We're going to call this Spreadsheet, not there, Spreadsheet and hole diameter. And we're going to call this one, just remember to press that little button, Spreadsheet horizontal dimension. Okay. This one, double check that one. I made that horizontal dimension. It should have been vertical dimension. So I'm going to clear that. Then go back in here. I'm going to say Spreadsheet vertical. Okay, there we go. So now we have them set correctly. Say close. And now we go to our pocket. And the depth of that pocket is in. We go into there and say Spreadsheet hole depth. And now I can tile my windows and I have a fully parametric hole. So my hole diameter I can make 3. And my horizontal dimension I can make 2. And my vertical dimension I can make 1. And my hole depth I can make 2. Or I can make it 6. And you can see the parametric hole depth right there. So let's just move it over. I'll give you one more shot of that. 4 or 1 or 11, which then makes a through hole. So there you have how you do a parametric hole depth. So we have the hole diameter, its placement, and the depth of the hole, all parametric. I was going to include some screw thread information, creating screw threads, in this video. However, I've run out of time, so I think what I'm going to do is put screw threads all in one video on its own. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I want to show you 2 ways of creating screw threads, one using the fastener workbench, and the other one creating a spiral with a thread profile on it. So we'll do that with an Acme thread because that's kind of easy to do. And maybe we'll do a parametric Acme thread that you can create for yourselves. So if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. If you haven't done so already, I'd appreciate it if you would take a look at our membership. You can actually join on YouTube here, or you can take a look at Patreon and join there. I'd be very happy if you do that. It's going to really help the channel. I want to keep making these videos, and I want to make them very useful for you. So if you have questions or comments, please feel free to leave a comment below. If you have something that you want me to incorporate into the tips and Q&A video for the next time, I'll certainly open to doing that. Thanks. Appreciate you watching.